Hey guys, I'm going to try something a little bit different today. I know they say that a lot lately, but I'm experimenting with stuff and seeing what works. This channel is growing, and with that, you got to recalibrate. Yeah, cool. But the idea here is I'm going to release it to the patrons, and you guys can tell me if I should make this video public next week. I was originally going to show you guys a behind the scenes thing about Lady Bits episode 8. I can do that next week. That is not time sensitive. Right now, I want to talk about something that had quite an effect on me, and I've been stuck on it, and so I got to talk to somebody about it. I've decided that somebody is gonna be you guys. What I'm referring to is the NBC town hall. I've got it here on everyday races in America. I watched it. I had a lot of strong feelings about it, and I recommend you watch it just because it is actual good programming. It's much better than the column Joy Reid put out adjacent to this town hall. I really want to like Joy Reid, but more and more and more, I'm like, girl, put your academic campus politics cap off. Stop trying to sound smart and just be a human being. Because I think there's a powerful story with her own prejudices that were on display, and she keeps missing them in the piece. I'll link it to the bottom. She makes it things black white issues that aren't. There's this thing in intersectional theory where it's like intersecting forms of discrimination. And two people can look exactly the same on paper and have two very different experiences. And to me, the reason I like that theory and the reason I'm so sad that intersectionalism has such a bad name right now, because it has some terrible messengers who actually misrepresent the concept, is that it really seems to me like we have been having the same discussion about bigotry, and more specifically racial bigotry, since the 1980s, maybe the 1990s. Maybe I'm being a little too fatalistic here, but it seems like we keep having the same conversation over and over and over. And the fact that we keep having the same conversation, the fact the conversation is not budging, indicates that what we're doing collectively is not working. And it really does seem very much like an us versus them message, instead of the idea is we're all people. Why are we treating certain people differently in a bad way, instead of just recognizing our differences but focusing on our similarities? I think that's where it's going wrong. And I think that another big thing, based on my own experiences, is the geographic component. That what it means to be black in New York is not the same as it means to be black in California. And I mean, California is a shining example of it's very different to be a rich black person in California than a middle class or poor black person in especially Los Angeles, versus being a black person in Chicago, with South Side and Chirac, and the absolutely preventable, absolutely fixable, massive geographic problems due to historical redlining that Chicago is facing right now, versus Philadelphia. The whole state of Pennsylvania has gone through a lot of economic change, and so neighborhoods are turning over. And when I see these pieces, these shows where people talk about what it's like to be black in America and the feelings of not belonging, and you know it reminds me a lot of the stuff that I felt growing up, and I realize I still feel, but I grew up in a black neighborhood. And where I grew up, there were certain interactions with certain people where race mattered very much. But when it came to local store owners and things like that, it was just, if you were a teenager in that neighborhood, they automatically assumed you were a thief, and did things that, in this day and age, in the days of the internet, they would have been caught and hopefully subjected to pretty severe social penalties. And so this idea, framing this issue as something that is so tied to an immutable characteristic that nobody else can possibly understand, I think is wrongheaded. I think the whole deal is that these things are imminently understandable. Everyone feels like they don't belong in some way. That's what I hear from everyone I talk to. Everyone is very focused on belonging, and most people do not feel like they really belong, like they really fit in. Granted, it may be the microcosm of gaming that I'm dealing with. That doesn't make it irrelevant, because the messaging I've found works is, hey, we're all in this together. There is more that makes us the same than makes us different. And, on the same day, I watch, because the town hall happened last night, but today that little kid, I'm recording this a day earlier, that kid was in the White House press briefing, and he asked a question about school shootings, and 3 different reporters referred to him as articulate. He was a white kid, so we don't think anything of that. But you call a black person articulate, that can be a point of sensitivity because of historical stuff. And those sensitivities, I think, are valid, and these are things we have to talk about. But we're not going to do that if everybody's just being, oh, I have it so bad and you don't understand. We have to change the entire dialogue, because you never change someone's mind by shouting at them. You may shut them up, but you don't change anyone's mind by shouting at them. That's why I thought that I'm Not Racist video was so powerful, because, you got the typical, Trump supporter guy. He's actually got the red hat and everything like that going on, a black guy. And then it turns around and, in a beautiful way, shows that, a lot of prejudices go both ways. And I think one of the stumbling blocks we have in understanding and dealing with all forms of bigotry is that people are like, why should I listen to you when no one's listening to me? And the pat answer in terms of race is, well, you're a white person. It's assumed people listen to you. And that's not true of, a poor family in Kentucky whose family has been ravaged by the opioid epidemic. And yes, the opioid epidemic is being treated very differently by the press than the crack epidemic in the 80s, but that doesn't mean these people are getting help. Their personal experiences are not reflected in the media. And I just think we need the talking points right now is sit down and shut up and listen, instead of, you'll get to talk, but show you can listen first. Hear me, and then I'll listen to you, and then we'll have a discussion. Unfortunately, in the media, it all comes down to who gets the final word, who hits their talking points, and you guys know that that's why I don't engage in debates, because it tends to be people talking past each other. Debating in a public forum is about listening to attack. It's about listening to counter someone's points with your points. It's not about listening to understand. And I find myself increasingly frustrated by the public forum of debate. I think there should be discussions that are actually televised. This is part of why I started doing dialogue options. Unfortunately, Lady Bits has gotten huge, and I really need help booking guests for dialogue options, which I don't have right now. But, part of the thing I liked about that is I could just take somebody like, a James Damore and just ask him questions and see who the person really is. Try to get what he was actually saying, not the imperfect way he said it. Because here's the thing, we're all imperfect speakers, because there's no such thing as perfection in speech. And this idea of, people who are good at media and not good at media. I don't know of anyone who feels good at media. You're constantly in an adversarial relationship with the press. when you're an entertainer or a public person. And I think what makes me good as an interviewer is I know what it's like to be on the other side of that coin and have hit pieces written and have subtle smear jobs done. And I don't think there's enough of that in the mass consumed press. I won't even say mainstream media anymore, because there's nothing mainstream about the opinions we see in media. And I thought there was a lot of good stuff in that NBC town hall. What I felt it was quite short on was actual solutions. I was kind of appalled by the lead up to the town hall, when people were saying we can't do anything about people being racist, but we can get them to shut up about it, was essentially the message. And I think that's horrible messaging. You absolutely can do something about people's opinions. You can change minds if you're willing to put in the work. I have seen people evolve. I mean, the fact that somebody like Joy Reid, who had clearly homophobic views, Al Sharpton had homophobic views at one point, and they were able to change their minds. I want to see that leveraged. What made them change their minds? Are they trying to say that they still are not totally comfortable with gay people, but they shut up about it? I don't think that's what they're saying. I think it's possible to sincerely evolve on a point. And we should look at situations of white supremacists that came back from the brink, of nationalists who softened their views, of people who moved from being homophobic or transphobic, and fear in those cases is a really real thing. I used to see guys, they were raised Catholic, and I say that only because they had been brought up in a unique culture. This was before we knew about the Catholic sex abuse scandal, so who knows what happened to these kids. But they would actually break out into a physical sweat when they knew they were around a gay man, a gay boy. So people can change their minds. People can become more comfortable with certain differences if we move the people who are different from the out group into the in group. I have seen huge strides in disability awareness personally in the stuff that I have done. People going from grumbling from about disability mandates, to recognizing that that guy in the wheelchair or that girl in the motorized scooter, they have as much right to be here as anyone else. And what I ended up doing in the short term, because a lot of the buildings in Toronto are old and not accessible, but it's like, we're not just going to uninvite someone if someone or say, well, sorry, there's nothing we can do. It's our collective problem. And after a few outings of carrying someone and their 50-pound motorized scooter upstairs because there's no wheelchair ramp, there was much greater support for finding a wheelchair accessible venue to do things at. And that's just one example of how, when it's something that happens to someone, when there's somebody who you care about as a person that you could actually ask questions of, it becomes a completely different discussion. And I don't see that in media outside of some videos that most people don't understand because they're art. You can only do so much in a 3-4 minute music video. But, I think that's another reason why I'm more sensitive, why you don't have to explain to me that there is a problem with race in America and up here in Canada. I mean, people keep using the term truth and reconciliation in the US. We're going through our own truth and reconciliation process up here, and it is not pretty. It is not kumbaya. It is real stuff. Of course, I'm talking about the First Nations Aboriginal Canadians who were displaced from their ancestral lands and separated from their families in some cases in something called the 60 Scoop. And they're, these people are so angry and they're so hurt and they've had to live with that pain for so long that in the short term, nothing is going to reconcile this for them. They need the time to be angry and be able to be all those horrible things we shouldn't be, irrational and angry and, lashing out and blame. This is a part of the process for a lot of people who have been legitimately wronged. And too often, too many people are like, no, that's unprofessional and all that stuff. And the fact that legitimate emotion has become unprofessional is a huge part of the problem, I think. I think there's nothing more professional than having the courage to speak your truth in a setting where your job is on the line. And we should be encouraging more people to do that, not less, and just get better at conflict and resolving conflict in a productive way. There is a way to fight productively. There is. I mean, I do that with people on this channel. Some of the patrons who have sent me messages and there's been back and forth or comments or things like that. You can speak to that. There is a way to do conflict right. But I don't think we can do that through television. I just don't think TV is the medium, because everything is to time. You have to hit those breaks. You have to hit that out. And it's very neat and controlled, and people get told when to clap, and people get told when to cheer, and people get told when to be quiet. You can't listen to understand in an environment that's to time, because listening to understand often takes quite a while, and it can be quite frustrating, and you need a lot of patience, because it's a process of, and this was one of the saddest things, the fact that this has become a meme, so what you're saying is blank. That's actually an important part of listening to understand. You tell the other person what you heard from them. The thing is, you have to give them a chance to respond, and that goes back and forth. You repeat it like, okay, so what I understand from you now is this, and they have the opportunity to say that's right or that's wrong. But that was so pilloried by internet hordes that I think some journalists may be hesitant to actually clarify with a subject that's way, and that's a very important part of the process. Now, I'd caution against, so what you're saying is you hate women, or what you're saying is you hate black people, or something like that. Because a person's most likely going to say no. If you catch yourself saying that, it's better to say, what do you mean by that? Like, I don't quite understand what you're going for here. You have to give people the benefit of the doubt to listen to understand. And cable news sure doesn't do that. And so that's sort of my general issue that I can't get past with a cable news service who is constantly in attack mode. Let's face it, attack. That's cable news. And it's all of them. It's CNN, it's Fox News, it's MSNBC. They attack. They don't just ask questions, they attack. And then they start preaching a message of tolerance. Well, that's a message of tolerance for me, but not for thee, right? And that's, I think, where they stumbled. That's why I think there's no trust, because now they're completely changing their message. And I did think there was a glorious moment when they were talking about, people calling the cops for something that's not illegal. And they talked about the fact that the media is to blame for certain negative perceptions of black people by people who don't associate on a regular basis with a lot of black people. And it was that they do tend to see on television more interactions with the police and black people than with white people. So the media, who treats themselves as the great saviors of society, is actually part of the problem. And I'm not sure the MSNBC people caught that. So like I said, it's worth a watch. It will be frustrating in places, but let me know if I should make this public, because I'm no judge. This is just too personal to me. It affects me and my friends and practically everyone I care about so much, because I do have a very, I hate it, multicultural friend group, but I do. And so this is of great concern to me. I want my friends to be treated with as much dignity and respect as I am anywhere I go. So let me know. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your support.